Welcome into a brand new edition of WarUp on the WPIAL. Greg Warnock and Jeff Upson with you to talk about this past week's wrestling action and get you set for next week as well. Before we talk about this past weekend, we had a ton of duels that we got a chance to see yesterday. But before we get to that, we want to bring on a guest who had an excellent wrestling weekend and honestly just a fantastic start to 2021, Mac Stout of Mount Lebanon. Mac, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Mac, you had a great weekend of wrestling, and like I mentioned, just all throughout 2021, you've just been dominant to this point, winning, if not by fall, at least by major decision in just about every single match to date. What's been the key to your success so far?
I think a big part of it is just not taking any match for granted. It's a hard time right now, so you never know what match is going to be your last. So I've been wrestling with that mentality and just trusting my training. Um, I think I train harder than anyone, and as long as I keep that in the back of my head, and uh, I have very good partners, so I trust my training and just have fun out there, and hopefully have the best outcome.
You mentioned your training. It had to be a unique off season in order to train to get to this point. Talk a little bit about that. You know how tough it was.
Yeah, it was a really unfortunate time, and it was kind of a shock, but almost exactly after states, we were able to get a gym in our garage, and that was like a blessing, and that was huge. And we've been lifting a lot. And this summer we got really strong. And my brother was home; he just graduated, so he was helping me and my brother out a lot. Me and Luke. And Luke's home; he's taking a gap. He's taking a gap year from Princeton. So I've been working out with Luke and Cal 4 or 5 days a week, sometimes six. So it's can't get much better than that. And they're a lot bigger and stronger than almost any guy I'm going to wrestle. So it's been very.
I was gonna say you got the unique opportunity to have such talented workout partners right in your house. So you know
Yeah,
when you had the space with everybody else, you at least still had that opportunity to work out with
yeah,
great guys.
yeah. I'm extremely fortunate for them. They helped me out a lot.
And don't forget about your dad, Brian. I mean,
Yeah,
he could still probably take on all three of you at the
yeah,
same time.
yeah, yeah,
I saw Kellen there yesterday with you, helping out, and that's got to be pretty special for you to have an older brother there. Just talk about this season thus far. I know you kind of talked on your training a little bit, but we saw you at True Power. You wrestled Jack Waymeyer, had a good match there. You ended up getting a fall, but you've been just dominating basically everyone you've wrestled, just scoring points at will. Justin Hart from Hampton, he's a three-time state qualifier. Brandon Roskowski yesterday, he's a state medalist. Liam Volkklaas, who's ranked in the state. I mean, you just really have been wrestling on a different level. Do you feel like you're wrestling on a different level, or does it just feel like kind of business as usual for you?
yeah. I mean, I've been wrestling pretty well, and I feel pretty good. But I think anyone can say this, but I think whenever I'm at my best, I don't really think many people can hang with me, and that's what like my coaches and my brother tells me all the time. Just get out there, have fun, get like in your flow, and have. And I think that's when you wrestle. That's when I wrestle best. So I've been able to do that, and yeah, so it's been good. Um, yeah,
Now, you talked about how Luke's taking a gap year. He's of course going to be heading to Princeton.
yeah.
Kellen was at Pitt. You are one of the top juniors in the state of Pennsylvania. What's the recruiting process been like, especially since COVID? I mean, I'm sure it's been super tough for you, but I'm sure a lot of college coaches are calling you and trying to sway you to come and compete for their schools. So what's the process been like for you thus far?
Yeah, it's kind of a tricky time, and I think it's maybe even harder for the coaches themselves because it's like there's so much time, and there's all these dead periods now, so it's been hard to like even be in touch, and like sometimes I feel like they don't want to talk to me too much because then it's like they use up all their time, and then they think I get sick of them and whatever, and so it's been hard, and there's been a lot of good schools that I've been talking to, so I'm excited to further it, and I'm looking forward to the dead period ending and finally getting to look at some of these schools because I haven't been able to been on campus and really been in touch with any of them like in person. So I think that's huge, and that's gonna probably be like a big thing for me is once I get like the in person feel because I think that's probably the most important.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, with Luke going to Princeton, he got in just right before basically all this stuff kind of went down, and I'm sure just being away from campus there is kind of hurting him a little bit. But then again, he has
Yeah.
you and Kellen to roll around with. You're going to Powerade, right? So you got Powerade coming up this weekend. It's not the same Powerade that we're used to, right? It's there are some different teams in, but there's still a stacked lineup. In fact, we could see a rematch of True Power with you and Jack Waymeyer potentially. What's the mindset going into Powerade? You are kind of rolling in through a wave of just winning. What's the mindset going into Powerade to try to get that title?
I think the mindset's just going to be taking one match at a time, just like I have this whole year and through my whole career, just not thinking about the next match or 2 matches away, but just taking the opponent that's in front of me and the same mindset I have every match. And I think that I'll have a good outcome. Having fun with each match, and yeah.
And you'll be wrestling at the new weight class, right? How are you feeling with the weight that you're wrestling right now? Do you feel like you're pretty comfortable there with the 189?
Yeah, I feel really good at 189. Before the season started, I was a little bit hesitant about it, and I was kind of a little bit frustrated to change the weights, but ended up working out really good for me, and I'm almost like it's a perfect weight for me. I'm kind of like right in between 95 and 82, so I ended up working out really well, and I feel really good, and I don't really have to cut any at all. So I've been able to focus on my training, just get better, and not have to worry about any weight, so it's really good.
Awesome.
And you Mount Lebanon, we've seen Mount Lebanon wrestle a couple times this year, and I know the mask policy is it's an interesting one with Mount Lebanon because we saw yesterday there were some, the wrestlers that you're wrestling against have to wear masks. It's kind of been a very crazy couple months or weeks for you, especially with COVID. What's the mask policy right now, and is there going to be a postseason potentially for you and the rest of the Mount Lebanon wrestlers, because it seems like there's no real policy from the PIAA to say if your school has to wear a mask but others don't, how do they address that? So right now, I'm assuming it's just kind of up in the air right now.
Yeah, so pretty much it's just up to my school board. As of now, we can only compete against schools that wear masks as well. So some schools are wearing them for us that aren't mask schools. So that's been really nice, and that's been allowed us to compete against some more teams that we wouldn't have been able to. But yeah, as of now, we can't compete against a whole lot of teams, and there's been a lot of schools that we haven't been able to wrestle against because of the rule. But it's kind of like a week by week thing, and hopefully, I think there's a meeting coming up soon, and hopefully it can be overturned in our favor to have a postseason. But yeah, so it's kind of a week by week thing, and just I kind of hoping for the best because it's not too much in our control.
Yeah, and like you said, it's out of your control at this point. You talked about the postseason last year. Probably one of the most exciting matches of the state finals. You and Lenny Pinto, that was a monster bracket. You beat Trey Kibe in the semifinals. You had a wild bout. I don't know what the score was. You probably do what the score was when the fall came, but I mean, you guys were just battling it out there. How much did you take away from that experience? Because that was your first time to the state tournament. How much did you take away from that finals match? And I'm sure it was tough to get over, but it doesn't seem like it's affecting you too much.
No, yeah, I think it was honestly one of like the best things that could have happened to me because it's allowed me to like stay hungry and work for the goal of taking gold these next 2 years. And I know I was young, so I got 2 more shots, and it stinks, and it really stung at first, but I don't really I kind of keep it in the back of my head, but I don't harp on it too much, and I don't let it weigh me down a whole lot because I know that I have a much brighter future than that match, and that I don't think that match really reflects me as a wrestler at all. So, yeah.
Well, Mac, we really appreciate you taking some time out to join us here today. It's been a pleasure catching up with you. We're excited to see how things play out for you, not only this weekend at Powerade, but hopefully with the postseason as well, and getting a chance to see if you can get to the top of the medal stand at Hershey. But again, thank you very much, and best of luck as you keep going forward through the season.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Mac. Appreciate it.
Cool.
So, Greg, we talked with Mac, and just to show you some of the stats that he's had thus far this year. So, on the graphic on the screen, you'll see he majored or tech falled or pinned everybody he's wrestled thus far. Cooper Baxter from Butler in the first match back, he beat him 19-4 tech fall in 4 minutes and 53 seconds. Cooper Baxter's tough. Liam Volkloss from Seneca Valley, 13-3. Justin Hart, 3-time state qualifier from Hampton, 16-5. Braden Roskowski yesterday at Kiski, 12-2 major decision. That's a state medalist. Eli Mackel from Waynesburg, 8-0. Volkloss again, he wrestled yesterday, 15-0 tech fall. I mean, he is just he's not just beating guys, he's punishing them. He's
destroying guys.
He's destroying guys. And we saw him at True Power, and I kind of said this after True Power because Jack Waymeyer started wrestling really well after True Power, after he got pinned by Mac, and everyone's saying, man, well, Jack's wrestling really well, and I'm saying, no, Jack's been good. That just shows you where Mac is, comparatively speaking, to the other wrestlers in the country. I think that he is just leaps and bounds ahead of the rest of the guys that are in his weight class. And personally, I think a lot of that may have to do with the fact that he's got 2 older brothers, right there next to him all the time, that he can lean on mentally, also can lean on to physically get him ready and get prepared. Both those wrestlers have been there before. They've both won the ultimate prize, so the blueprint's there for Mac Stout, and I think this may be a great thing for him, having those brothers there with him. But clearly it's paying off because he's just absolutely dominating guys.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I think he benefited more so than any other guy as far as, having this COVID time where people couldn't work out, people couldn't get together, especially in those first few months. He was able to just go, like he said, he was able to get a gym right in his garage. So he's able to just go right outside. And you mentioned not only his dad being so talented, but then his 2 brothers, both guys have won state titles. And Luke in a way was dominant last year, right? I mean, he really took it to a number of guys. So to see Mac doing that this year, it's just been impressive. He's definitely taken so many leaps. You remember his freshman year, didn't make it to the state tournament. You thought he was kind of that fringe person who may be able to make it. Then the next year he makes it to the state finals. Not only that, he beats Trey Kibe. And now all of a sudden you're talking about him just majoring and tech falling and pinning guys. I mean, every year it's been incremental how much he's changed, how much he's been able to dominate guys. It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, he really has. It's like you said, he's really stepped up to a different level, and I think you're right. He of others are just, he's been able to benefit from COVID by having 2 of his brothers there. So
I think the biggest question is just going to be, can he wrestle in the postseason?
Yeah,
I think that's the
that's
question.
I mean, and I was unaware. I mean, I knew that Mount Lebanon was requiring their team wrestlers to wear masks when wrestling another team, and I know that they had to have their opponents agree to wear a mask, but I didn't know that it was, could potentially inhibit Mac from wrestling. He didn't have to wear a mask when he's wrestling because he has an exemption from a doctor, but that's not to say everyone on that team has one. It's also not saying that they'll be able to actually compete in the postseason. So yeah, I think you're right. The biggest question is, can he actually compete in the postseason?
Yeah, not everybody's going to wear a mask in the WPIAL finals or in the super region finals or the state finals just to accommodate, right? I mean, I think that's something that hopefully they will allow him to compete, because he would be. I mean, he's you're taking away a potential state champion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say for sure a potential state champion, probably a guy who's poised to win the state. If he wrestles like he is right now, I don't see anyone in the state beating him. Just the way the way things have been going. But and I got to see him this weekend. But Greg, you missed out, man. You missed out on a whole heck of a lot of good matches, good wrestling this weekend at Kiski area. Luckily we had Phil Mary jump in. Phil Mary's was first time on the mic. He did amazing. First time on the mic, he did amazing. We had a great time. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work. We had multiple mats that we were trying to do. it was just a lot, but we had a great time, and wish you could have been there, but I get it. You got priorities.
That's right. Got family priorities this past weekend, but let's look at the wrestling action that did take place. And I think the biggest question was, how close is Seneca Valley to Waynesburg, right? We on this show, you and I have said they are above and beyond anyone else in the WPIAL right now, and really almost anyone else in the state for that matter. But I think they proved that here this past weekend against a number of qualified teams. I mean, they beat Penn Trafford, Mount Lebanon, Franklin Regional, Kiski, all by dominant scores. But then they took it to Seneca Valley as well, 42-12 over Seneca Valley.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, Seneca Valley was missing Hunter Swedish, but they just dominated that match. I mean, there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They just completely dominated from top to bottom. Dylan Chappell got a win over Colton Stone King 4-2. Alejandro got a 1-0 win over Rocco Welsh in a rematch of the True Power match that we saw them in. That's a coin toss. That can go either way. Connor Smith came back to beat Kai Sheptic from Waynesburg. He was, he didn't look great in the first two periods, but then had a penalty point and then just went on a tear. He got a couple turns to beat Sheptic from Waynesburg, but other than that, it was all Waynesburg, right? Volkklaas was able to get a win over Eli Mackel, but basically everyone who needed to win did. Wyatt Henson beat Chan Shear in a matchup of two of the top 10 guys in the state. Cole Hammett got a fall. Luca Augustine got a fall. Nate Stevenson beat Antonio Emilio, probably one of the best matches of the year for him. I've been high on Stevenson, but needed to see that really good win for him, and he got it this time around with Emilio. They had met in the past; he had beaten him before, but Emilio, of course, a state medalist last year, so. And he made sure to let me know. He kind of looked over at me after the win, kind of gave me a head nod, like, You gonna show me some respect now or what? Yeah, I got you, Nate. I see you. Xander Fatoris looked good in his kind of Pennsylvania coming out party. Definitely looked great. He did lose to Carter Dybert when Franklin Regional wrestled Waynesburg, but he looked good. What we learned and what we took away from this weekend was Waynesburg is very good, and they are well ahead of the rest of the field. There's no way Seneca Valley can go back to the drawing board and say, well, they can make it closer, but I just can't see them coming out. I don't know how you come back from a 42-12 decision. I think, you could say Emilio could get, turn that and get a win. You could say, Alejandro and Rocco Welsh, it's kind of a toss-up there. I think Volkklaas and Mackel, maybe more of a toss-up. I would also say 106 with Smith and Sheptic is also a toss-up. So,
yeah. So what you're saying is almost Seneca Valley won essentially every toss-up match except for Emilio Stevenson.
Yeah. I mean, that's essentially it. They had, against Swedish.
There's not a lot of room
being
to make
out
up the ground.
Yeah, there's not. I mean, Swedish is gonna, he will help. Having Hunter Swedish back in the lineup will help, but we're not talking about a like a Seneca Valley over Kiski 33-28 match. We're talking about a match that was 42-12. So yeah, that's a lot of points to make up. And if I'm the rest of the teams in the state, I'm thinking, man, Waynesburg is not one to mess with, because they really are as good as advertised, Greg. They just really dominated, and they looked great doing it. So I'm excited to see them at Powerade. On an individual level, we've seen them on a team level, but individually, I can't wait to see what they're going to bring.
Some other matchups from over the past weekend over at the Cavalier Duals that I'd love to get your thoughts on. You mentioned Seneca Valley. They got a couple of big wins. They beat Cannon McMillan 45-19. They also beat Kiski 33-28. That match a lot closer than some may have expected. I think the one to me that's most surprising, Franklin Regional over Cannon McMillan 41-29. That one to me, I think, is just the most surprising because I think we weren't really talking about Cannon McMillan in that top, or I'm sorry, Franklin Regional in that top 5 or 6, where we had Cannon McMillan, 4, 5, 6, somewhere in that range. We didn't expect them to be as strong this year, but we also didn't expect them to lose a match like that to Franklin Regional. Not that Franklin Regional is a bad team by any means, just that we expected Cannon Mac to come out and perform better than they did.
Yeah, I mean it was definitely a tough day for Cannon Mac. They were without a couple guys. Costa Moore was out due to some contact tracing, and Matt Furman was out as well for I'm not sure what exactly he was out for, but they were missing two guys.
Which are two big studs for them.
Yeah, I mean, on a team that doesn't have a marquee name such as Garrett Ninehouse, those a guy like Costa Moore, 2-time state qualifier, and Furman, who's ranked top 20 in the state, you have to have those guys in the lineup in order to be competitive, even with a team like Franklin Regional, who is kind of on a down year a little bit depth wise. But talking to Matt Leby, they were still down like 3 starters too. At least two. Ty Capusta at 106 was out. And then there was somebody else at 45, or I forget who was out, that would have helped them out flexibility-wise. So, yeah, that's surprising. What surprised me more, and I don't know if you saw this or not, Greg, Penn Trafford beat Kiski area, right? That to me was way more surprising because, I didn't think PT they were in the top 10 at all really. They don't have Bo Chisco, so really they have a good lineup throughout, and we saw them at Midway Mayhem, and I thought they looked good, but I didn't think they would be able to hang with the likes of Kiski, Franklin Regional, and those guys. Now, Kiski was without Enzo Merlaki from Kiski, who was at 160, and he would have made a huge impact for Kiski, but even without him, I'm really impressed with Penn Trafford. So, the winners in my book, Penn Trafford and Franklin Regional, definitely outkicked their coverage a little bit this weekend. Cannon Mac, I think they got some holes to plug up. They got some things that they have to do in order to be competitive. We're going to see them this week against Waynesburg. So we're talking about different trajectories. Waynesburg's, just really on the upward swing, and Cannon Mac, trying to get the pieces back together, if you will. So, it's not a good time to be wrestling one of the best teams in the state like Waynesburg if you're Cannon Mac. But hey, these guys have to battle. These guys, it's still early, quote, in the competition year, so these guys got to learn to win the close matches. And for the most part, I thought Cannon Mac wrestled well. I don't think there was anyone in particular that didn't, perform to where they were supposed to. It's just that this was such a tough dual tournament. My gosh, I mean, the amount of state-ranked, nationally ranked guys there. I mean, Wyatt Henson was there. He wrestled Finn Solomon. Those are 2 Division I recruits, Iowa, NC State. You had Carter Dybert wrestling Dylan Chappell. That's a state finals rematch, which Carter was able to win. That was a weird match. Weird sequence of positionings in the first period where it was a weird sequence. You can go back and watch it on our Rockfin channel, but Chappell kind of got taken to his back, but he didn't really get taken to his back. It didn't look like there was control. I don't know. It was just a strange match, but really good match nonetheless. So yeah, I mean, you're talking about some of the best wrestlers, not only in the WPIAL, but the state. So hey, you're going to take some losses. Kiski area took some losses, some ones that they probably weren't expecting to take, but it's a growing process, right? These are matches that are going to prepare you for the postseason, and that super region. It's not going to get any easier when you go to that super region and you're facing all these tough guys from not only your same district but also 2 other regionals, right? With the Northwest and South Central. So it's like, hey, you got to show up and you got to do it now.
Well, you mentioned, Kiski too. I mean, they kept it tight with Seneca Valley, but then they dropped that loss to Penn Trafford. So, I guess is Seneca Valley are they the clear number 2? Or are they the clear top 2 and 3 with Hempfield in there as well? Or at this point, are they starting to draw back in? Because to me, I feel like you have Cannon McMillan, you have Kiski, now Penn Trafford in the mix, Franklin Regional. We talked about Latrobe getting stronger, North Allegheny. You can throw Connellsville in the mix, although they've been down. They were down last week anyway when we talked about them. But all these teams together are just kind of you put them in you put them in one tournament and you don't know who's going to come out from those sets of teams.
Yeah, so I would say, based on my assessment on just seeing what we've seen thus far this year, I think there's, you have a clear level, number 1 with Waynesburg, right? They're in a tier and it's their own.
Absolutely.
Then you have Seneca Valley. I think Seneca Valley, maybe Waynesburg's just really that good. Seneca Valley, I think, is still in a tier of their own. And then I think you have Hempfield kind of in another, and I think Hempfield's a little bit closer to Seneca Valley than Seneca Valley is to Waynesburg, if that makes sense. If I had a drawing board, I would draw it to make it make sense, because it makes sense in my head, but that doesn't mean it makes sense to the rest of everyone else. But you got Waynesburg, Seneca Valley, Hempfield, right? The gap between Waynesburg and Seneca Valley is pretty big. The gap between Seneca Valley and Hempfield, not that big. But then you have a whole slew of other teams that I think are competitive and in the mix, so to speak, right? So you've got Cannon Mac, you've got Franklin Regional, you've got Latrobe, you've got Norwin, you've got all these schools, Kiski, Penn Trafford. You throw them all in a bag, you shake them up, and you really don't know what you're going to get, right? So all the teams that we saw, compete at a high level yesterday, but also, Hempfield, we saw them just kind of not say dominate the dog duels at Hampton, but they're up there. Then you have Thomas Jefferson, you have North Allegheny. Those teams are all kind of in the mix with those Norwins, with the Latrobes, with Kiskis. I think you have a 3-horse race with Waynesburg, Seneca Valley, and Hempfield. But the rest, I think 1 is clear, 2 and 3 could switch, but 4 through 12, take your picks, man, because it's who's on. Here's a few things. 1, it's who's on and matchups, but it's also who's available, because you may have guys out with COVID protocols, right? You have contact tracing that comes back and says, hey, you got to be out for 10 days. That could kill your lineup. So on any given day, it just you just don't know.
Cannon McMillan, for example, right? I mean, Costa Moore and Brendan Furman are out. That changes your whole team, because those two are two of the guys that usually pick up, at very least, get you wins.
Well, Brandon Furman's out because he graduated. He's at Cornell. So
I'm sorry, Matt Furman.
I had to. Sorry. I'm sorry. Everyone calls me out when I make all these mistakes. Eric's on me. You're on me all the time. Rob's on me, and it's just nice to have somebody else slip up, so that way I can I can call you out.
Congratulations. Do you feel good about yourself?
I mean, I feel pretty great. Yeah. Are you gonna go
to bed tonight now and be like, I got one. I finally got one.
Yeah, I am. I'm gonna go to bed. I finally got those bullies. Shut up, Greg. Just shut up. When you talk about the team race, it's really interesting, because you have all these different teams that are competitive. I can't wait to see the WPIAL team bracket, because you're going to have some really good early round matches. A team like Thomas Jefferson is going to surprise people. North Allegheny as well. They're going to come out and potentially they could be a 4th. They could be the 4th best team in the WPIAL. You just don't know. Cannon Mac, maybe we had them a little higher than thought. I had them 9 in the state. I think they're probably, after this weekend, definitely a little bit lower than that. But regardless of what we said, it's who's available and who shows up in those matchups. Those matchups are so critical. But clearly Waynesburg's the cream of the crop here.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how they seed it as well, because I think with the steering committee, you're going to have they're going to look back at this Cavalier Duals as a big way to kind of help seed. But when you look at who was out in the lineup and how many guys were out and what would the score be different? So it's going to be interesting for sure. When you look at some of the other results from this past weekend, the Southmoreland duels were also this past weekend. Their holiday classic duels, and the winner there was Butler. They came away with the first place finish from the weekend. They defeated Greensburg-Salem 51-18. The third place match, Best Center, a winner over Pine Richland 39-24. So you look at AA, Best Center, your number one team coming out of there and beating a Pine Richland team, and then Butler winning it all for the title.
Yeah, I was impressed with Butler and Best Center. In fact, Best Center I was impressed with. They had a couple big wins coming up into this weekend. I was impressed with them this weekend, and that's why they snuck into the top 25 in the state dual team rankings. And I think they're probably going to go up a little bit higher too, especially after seeing what they were able to do this weekend. But you look at Butler. Can you throw Butler in that conversation as well? Can they make a stand in the WPIAL AAA? I don't know. There again, you just throw them all in a bag and see where they end up. And I think Butler can be in that conversation. But yeah, Beth Center. We talked about Burrell, and we'll talk about them in a second with the Ultimate Duels. Can anyone touch Burrell? Beth Center looking pretty good. What about Southmoreland? We talked about them. We talked about some other teams that are kind of in the hunt. Mount Pleasant. But man, Burrell's still doing what Burrell does.
Yeah, Burrell. You talk about a clear cut with Waynesburg. Burrell and AA is still the clear cut. Big gap between them and the number two. The question is, who's that number two? Is it Burgestown? Is it Best Center? Is it Mount Pleasant? Those are probably the three teams I'm looking at right now to grab that number two spot. But for sure, right now, it has to be Burrell. And they just came off of, you mentioned the Brookville Duels, where they did get a big win over Brookville, 36-32. And then they dropped a tight one to Chestnut Ridge, 33-30.
Yeah, that was a tight match, and I'll put the box score up here of what that was. So you look at the Burrell and Brookville match. It was 36-32. So matches that could have went either way. You had a couple forfeits. You had, I believe, three. Yeah, you had 3, 285, 113, and 152. Damian Barr got one. Salerno got a pin. Edwards got a pin for Burrell, Oswald got a pin, and Corrado got a pin. So other than that, you look at some tight matches. Jackson Zimmerman beat Cole Clark 5-3. Farah and Caden Walter, that was a tight match, 3-1. So you look at a couple of these matches, and they could go either way. But Burrell looked pretty good against Brookville. And then against Chestnut Ridge, They looked really solid. I thought they were 33-30. They lost to Chestnut Ridge, who's probably one of the top teams in the state right now. But Oswald got a pin. AJ Corrado got a pin. Luke Moore was able to beat Damian Barr from Burrell 20-9. Callan Bowman, state runner-up last year, beat Farah from Burrell 5-0. I thought that was a pretty close match. Cole Clark from Burrell got a fall, and Daniel Moore tech falled Colby Christie. So, I thought they battled him well, but I think you could see this again in Hershey, and it could be 33-30 the other way too. So it's just a matter of who shows up, like we talked about, and who does not give up the bonus point. The 145-pound match was a big toss-up for me. Jack Moyer from Chestnut Ridge beat Aaron Edwards 3-1. I think that's a match that could go either way anytime. So if I'm Burrell, and it's funny because they normally go to the Ultimate Duels and they lose. They lose a lot of matches there because they're wrestling, maybe hurt or they're wrestling AAA teams. But they always then come back and wrestle really well in the WPIAL postseason, team postseason that is. So I expect them to continue their reign on the WPIAL. But overall, I thought a good weekend for Burrell Bucks.
Yeah, when you look at some of the competition, Mount Pleasant and Burgestown also taking place this past weekend. Mount Pleasant was at the Hampton Duals, where they got a chance to wrestle Hempfield as well as Thomas Jefferson. Hempfield defeated Mount Pleasant 48-24, and they Mount Pleasant also fell to Thomas Jefferson 46-23. And we talked about AAA, and you mentioned Thomas Jefferson as a team. They had a tight one with Hempfield, 40-34, Hempfield over Thomas Jefferson. So, we talk again. We've mentioned it ad nauseum about how close AAA is. Mount Pleasant coming in though and getting some big wins. They had a big win over Quaker Valley, 42-21. So just it was good to see some impressive wrestling at Hampton as well.
Yeah, there was a lot of good wrestling there. Thomas Jefferson, I thought, looked really sharp against Hempfield, 40-34. Quaker Valley, not too bad, 33-29 against TJ. Mount Pleasant, we talked about can they battle Burrell, but they fell to Thomas Jefferson 46-23. But they beat Quaker Valley 42-21, so I thought that was a good showing for them. Connor Redinger from Quaker Valley not in the lineup as of yet. So yeah, I think we kind of are left with more questions than we are answers, especially with AA. So if we talked about AAA and we talked about the tier system, I would say Burrell right here, kind of like a Waynesburg, although the gap between them and the rest of the field is a lot smaller than it is with Waynesburg and the rest of the field. But I think Beth Center has kind of emerged as in my opinion, a really top number 2 team here. So I think they are kind of like that Seneca Valley in AAA. I think Beth Center is clearly there, but I think Mount Pleasant is kind of in that conversation as well. Burgettstown as well, like you said, they wrestled in their own duels. They beat Char Valley and they beat Upper St. Clair and South Fayette. They dominated
all AAA schools.
Yeah, all AAA schools. They dominated 57-17 over Char Valley, 65-3 over Upper St. Clair, 69-6 over South Fayette. So clearly, Burgettstown is taking it to even AAA schools. So I think you have Burrell, I think you have Beth Center, and I think you have Burgettstown kind of in the mix with the rest of some other teams there. But AA is all. I feel like we've had this conversation for the last 5 years. Who's going to touch Burrell? Who's going to compete against Burrell? And just change the name, right? Because it's always been. Is it Freedom? Is it Quaker Valley? What team is it? Is it Dairy? And we still are having those same conversations in 2021, Greg.
Yeah, we are, and I think the gap between Burrell and the next one down, I think is as big as Waynesburg and Seneca Valley. I really do. I put Burgettstown as the number 2. I mean, they were the number 2 last year, so I think it's their spot to lose, and they come back and they've been dominant in every match they've wrestled so far. So I think it's their spot, and I think from their Best Center, then followed by Mount Pleasant because of the lack of depth that Mount Pleasant has. That's where I would go in AA. But it's we have the 2 top teams in WPIAL, and I think going into it who those top 2 teams are. The drama for the top spot is gone. It's just 2, 3, and 4 is where it's at from there. As far as in individual-wise, there's also the North Allegheny Invitational as well. Not to go through every weight class, but was there any performances in particular that really stood out for you?
There was a few. You look at some of the weights that had some tougher competition. Nate Roth pins Nathan Monapart from North Allegheny in 3 minutes. I was talking to a lot of people over the weekend about 132 and how a lot of people feel Nate Roth is definitely a contender to battle with the best of them in the state, and I would have to agree. His results thus far have really spoke really strongly for him and his performance after getting injured last year. So Nate Roth dominated 132. Blake Reiner from Trinity, he had a nice win over Nick Gorman from North Allegheny 6-5. So avenged the loss to him from earlier in the year. So good win for the Trinity freshman. Vinny Kilkeary bounced back from a loss last week to Chad Ozias from Collinsville. He pins his way through to win the 113-town title. You also had 160 where Chase Krantz lost to Jackson Spires from General McLean, which we saw Jackson Spires. He was in that weight class at Midwinter Mayhem. So I thought he had a good weekend. John Altieri beat Max Stediford from North Allegheny 3-1. Thought that was a good win for Altieri. We said about how Altieri is wrestling at a really different level. And Trent Schulteis from Freedom, he's wrestling up at 189. He beats by major Logan Hoffman from Bell Vernon, who we've been pretty high on. So, I thought Trinity wrestled well. Micah Finley won a title at 138 over Gabe Golden. As I mentioned, Blake Reiner and Tyson Brophy from Trinity won at 285. So, I don't think anything really stuck out. We saw Trinity and NA wrestle at the first NA tournament. That was an individual too. So, I mean, I guess NA just had two individual tournaments in a matter of a couple weeks. Good for them. But I think NA wrestled really tough too. They had, I think every single wrestler they had placed top 4. So that's again shows the depth that is with North Allegheny.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And just so some people under win. Only match I just want to kind of mention from earlier in the week, Hempfield and Norwin did take place on Wednesday, and Hempfield defeated Norwin 40-34. There was actually bonus points in every single match. They were all won by forfeit or by fall, except for by forfeit or fall, except for 2. There were 2 major decisions. 126, Ethan Bergen for Hempfield won by major, and at 145, John Altieri won by major. Outside of that, every won by fall or by forfeit. So, not I don't know where they kind of make up the room there, but Hempfield had a tight one with Norwin. So that shows you again just the depth and the quality of matches that we could end up seeing.
Yeah, and I said it earlier. Hempfield, I think they're in the mix, but I think they got to get stronger in certain positions. I think they need some of their guys to be a little bit, have a little bit more fight and not give up some bonus points, because like you said, there was a lot of bonus points to be had in that match. So, you save 3 points, 4 points in a dual meet. That's huge. We talked about it yesterday at the Kiski Duals. So, Hempfield's they're going to be tested, right? They're going to be tested, and I think that's why they're that kind of number 3 on the bubble team there. With the rest of the 4 to 12 teams that are competing for a spot in that top 4. So, again, I'm excited to see. We've seen a lot of team action recently, but I'm excited for some individual tournaments like the Powerade that's coming up this weekend, man. I can't wait for the Powerade. It's happening in 2021, so we didn't have a Powerade in 2020. We're probably going to have 2 in 2021, which is pretty cool. But man, I just can't wait for the first whistle to say this is actually happening.
Well, before we preview that, let's first throw it over to Nick Fuller of Tactical Mind. And then once we hear from Nick, we'll preview the Powerade tournament before we wrap things up.
This is the Tactical Mind, and I work with athletes in the field of sports psychology as a cognitive performance coach. Within 5 minutes of talking to a parent, they make the connection right away that this would be great for my kid to have when they're in college, when they're just going through the ups and downs of high school. Who wouldn't benefit from having more self-awareness? Who wouldn't benefit from having the ability to self-regulate our emotions and our counterproductive thoughts? Who wouldn't benefit from having more optimism, not just on the field, but in life?
Don't forget, use promo code POWER to receive 50% off your initial consultation. Again, promo code POWER, POWER, and you will receive 50% off your initial consultation.
Yeah, and I had a conversation with Nick yesterday, actually. I talked to him and Jordan Oliver. He's working with Jordan Oliver from Easton right now in helping him on his journey to make the Olympic team and win an Olympic gold medal. And I had the opportunity to talk with J.O. and Nick for about an hour yesterday, just about the mental edge and the mental side of training for wrestling. That interview is going to be up and available probably within the next couple of days. So I wanted to shout that out because I can't wait to be able to show that to you, because Jordan Oliver, obviously household name in Pennsylvania, but just wanted to shout that out real quick, Greg.
Yeah, and be on the lookout for it, because I think there are some people who, they hear the commercial on our show and they wonder, I'm just kind of skeptical about this, or I'm not 100% sure about this. Listen to the interview, and I think that'll kind of clear some things up for you, and definitely take a look, because I think Nick can definitely be a good help to you guys. Looking at the Powerade, so it's hard to believe that we're talking about here at the end of January, a full month later than expected. But here we are, like you mentioned, Jeff. And on Friday and on Saturday, it's going to be broken up a little bit different than some would expect. You have the opening round, the round of 64, the round of 32, and the round of 16, as well as the consolations, the pigtail round, first, second, and third, all being Friday. But it's going to be broken down by weight classes. So at a 9 a.m. start, you're going to have 106 to 126 pounds, and you're going to wrestle all of those rounds I just mentioned. 1 o'clock, you're going to have the same thing, all of those rounds I just mentioned, from 132 to 152. And then at 5 o'clock, 160 to 285 gets their opportunity to come in and do that. So that's how they have it broken down. 3 different sessions on the first day. The second day of the tournament, it'll be quarterfinals and 4th round consolations, and then the 5th and 6th round consolations, as well as the semifinals. That's going to be the 4th session. That's going to start at 8 a.m., 6 pounds to 138. The next session will then start at 12 o'clock, 145 to 285, quarterfinals all the way through everything I just mentioned. And then the last session, which will be all the weights, 106 to 285, will be the 7th round consolations, and then the consolation and the championship finals, starting again at 4, and then the consolations and the finals starting at 5:30. So it's the best way they can do it to pull off the tournament. But first, Jeff, throwing to you in regards to the schedule. My only thought to this is I know these teams come all together, 106 all the way to 285. So where do some of these kids go? What kind of happens here?
Yeah, so after the weigh-ins, most of them are going to have to go back to the hotel area. So the DoubleTree is I believe attached to the convention center, but so basically you're going to have 2 teams, right? You're going to have a 106 to 152 team, and then so on and so forth. So I think you just kind of are showing up at different times and wrestling at different times. So it's going to be, I mean, when you have this many wrestlers and this many teams, there's going to be, there's going to be some overlap. There's going to be some struggles and some growing pains, if you will. But I think Frank Volcano has a really good idea on how he wants to run it. And I'll put the schedule up on the screen again for folks to see. But it's broken up by weight class. But I also feel that, on that Saturday session, you're going to see all those championship matches, the medal round matches at the same time, which is kind of like almost like a parade of everyone coming together finally for one little round. And I'm excited. I'm just excited for it to be happening. There was a lot of discussion on whether this was actually going to take place or not. Plus, with all the teams that have been in and out, and I'll put up the team list there. You got from Pennsylvania, Altoona, Bell Vernon, Bellefonte, Bishop McCourt, Blackhawk, Burgettstown, Burrell, Cannon Mac, Carlington, Central Mountain, Chestnut Ridge, Connellsville, Derry, Du Bois, Faith Christian Academy, Forest Hills, Fraser, Freedom, General McLean, Germantown Academy, Hampton, Harbor Creek, Hempfield area, Hickory, and Kiski. Those are all really tough teams that we talked about. Then you throw in some other ones from out of state too, Archbishop McNicholas, LaSalle from Ohio. You got Latrobe, Laurel, Malvern Prep is really going to be the team to watch outside of Waynesburg. Meadowbrook Christian, Montoursville, Mount Lebanon. As we heard from Mac, he's going to be the only one competing for Mount Lebanon at the Powerade tournament. Mount Pleasant, Northern York, Norwin, Notre Dame Green Pond. This is a big one here. Notre Dame Green Pond from District 11. They're the number 1 ranked team in the state in AA. They do lose 2-time state champion Ryan Crookham, who is transferring or has transferred to Saucon Valley. Probably not going to be eligible this year, but they still are just loaded with top-end talent. Brennan Kletos, you got Evan Mag. You've got a ton of guys there that are going to compete to a high level. Then you got Pine Richland, Quaker Valley, Seneca Valley, South Park, Southmoreland, St. Joseph's Academy, TJ, Trinity, Twin Valley, Waynesburg, West Allegheny. Walsh Jesuit from Ohio and Western Reserve Academy from Ohio will also be there. So you got a nice little tournament. We don't have our Wyoming Seminary. We don't have our Reynolds. But we still have some really good programs with a lot of history of winning, with a lot of nationally and state-ranked guys that are going to be coming. And, I don't think we're going to see full lineups of teams that are coming. So you had mentioned about how is it going to be, and I think you're going to have a lot of teams that are sending partial lineups, which is kind of makes it easier on tournament director Frank Volcano to manage just the mass number of people. You're not going to have very many teams bring full 13 wrestler weight classes to the tournament, I don't think.
Yeah, you got 55 teams in all, and you mentioned like Mount Lebanon is one of them, right? They're only bringing one wrestler. No one else is wrestling from Mount Lebanon. So, yeah, you're right on the money there. And there's a lot of local teams. Obviously, I think that wrestlers up to the tournament at that time, but so and then they're not there all day, lingering around Monroeville, but just a number of talented guys going to be wrestling here, and every weight class is going to be loaded with top talent.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. We're going to see a lot of good wrestling. It's just nice to have an individual tournament like this. It's such a prestigious tournament, and it's 54th year. So there, like I said earlier, there wasn't any way Frank Volcano was going to not hold this unless, the National Guard showed up and said, you got to shut down. So I know he's excited and probably anxious to get it started. But yeah, it should be a lot of fun. And we're going to be doing a special Powerade preview show later this week as well to make sure that we get all, once we get the seeds and everything like that. It's going to be a lot of fun to try to dissect and figure out where guys are going. So, be on the lookout for that.
When should the folks be expecting the brackets to be released?
So probably, seeds will probably be Wednesday evening. So if you go to papowerwrestling.com/Powerade Wrestling, you'll see all the information there, schedule, the teams, and that's where the seeds will be as well. So probably Wednesday or early Thursday. So, and we'll be doing a preview show on Thursday to kind of preview everything that's coming to Powerade. So be on the lookout for that. It's Powerade week, man. It doesn't feel like it. It absolutely does not feel like it. It feels strange, but hey, we're going to roll with the punches, man. We're going to do it. We're going to bring you the best coverage there is around the Powerade. So I can't wait for this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, nothing has been normal to this point. So just good to get the wrestling in. And then from here, I think really it shifts, right? Because you have the Powerade tournament. And then I think Can Mac has the duels next week. We'll see if those end up happening. But other than that, I think everything just kind of shifts from you got Powerade, and then we're getting into postseason.
Yeah, we're going right into the team postseason, right? And there's a lot of districts that still don't know what they're doing with their team postseason, which is scary and also kind of concerning. But yeah, it's basically, at least for the WPIAL, it's going right into from Powerade, basically. Probably your top teams are going to be hunkering down. Some teams may be competing or not. We're not sure at this point. The schedules change basically every half hour. Schedules are changing. But after Powerade, it's really gearing up for the team postseason and then right into individual postseason. And then, hey, maybe we'll go back to the team postseason to finish out the state tournament. I don't know. We'll see if that happens or not, Greg. It'll be interesting.
Well, one thing I just wanted to follow up to kind of finish up the show, Jeff. You had a chance to be out of Kiski and be around a number of top schools, and we had Phil Mary on as well with you on the show or on the broadcast. Any other talk or just, how is this going to work with the postseason because of, look, it cost them more couldn't wrestle because of contact tracing. Was there any more talk about how this is even going to work here in a month or in a few weeks, I should say?
I think there's a loose plan in place, but we've already kind of talked about it. I don't see. Yeah, there was talk about it, but there was a lot of uncertainty about it. Even ADs. I've talked to many ADs. I've talked to many head coaches, and there's still a lot of, quote, uncertainty of how it's going to work. And I think it's a week by week basis. And if you are out, you're out, right? If you have to sit out, they're not gonna say, hey, we're gonna hold up the tournament so and so can wrestle. I think the message from coaches is to the wrestlers is you have to have bubbles and you have to stay within your bubble. So your family, your teammates, and your schoolmates. That's about it. Like you should not be venturing too far out of your bubbles, especially when you start getting closer to the team and individual postseasons. So, and a lot of it is just it's uncertainty. It's unpredictable. Anyone, their parents are working. So if you have a parent who's working who comes back positive and you report that and you end up having to be out 10, 14 days, whatever it is, whether you're symptomatic or not. So yeah, I mean, there's just kind of the schedule is what the schedule we talked about was earlier in the broadcast. That's the schedule that the WPIAL's going with, and we'll see if there's any adjustments made to that. I would not be surprised if there's some type of changes when it comes to the individual postseason at least. So yeah, there's nothing definitive. I made a long ramble about. To answer your question is no, nothing definitive has been decided or talked about the individual postseason, Greg.
Well, want to thank Mac Stout for joining us on the show today and everybody for listening in. We're excited to see how it plays out here this week with Powerade tournament and see such a large individual tournament take place. And I think this will be a good primer for us, this Powerade tournament, to get us set for the postseason that's set to come here in just a couple of weeks. But again, thank Mac Stout. Also for my broadcast partner, Jeff Upson. I'm Greg Warnock. Thanks for listening in to WarUp on the WPIAL.